Thank you for joining us today's webinar, Quest Alternatives for Modern Active Directory in Hybrid Cloud Environments, with Dmitry Sotnikov, Cayosoft Chief Product Officer, and Craig Burt, Cayosoft Principal Security Engineer and Technical Evangelist. Before I introduce Dmitry, there are a few important items to mention. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the Questions tab on the GoToMeeting window. We will respond during the Q&A period. If we don't get to your question, please provide your email address and we will respond post-event. The webinar is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing on Cayosoft's YouTube channel. We will send a link to you via email. With that, I'm pleased to introduce Dmitry Sotnikov.
Thank you, Elaine. All right, let's get started. We have quite a lot to cover today. We'll talk about the Quest software Microsoft management products that Cayosoft replaces, and we'll compare the products. So we'll let you know how they stack against each other, so you know which Quest products can be replaced by Cayosoft and how. We will actually demonstrate those features that Cayosoft can replace, and Craig will help me with that. And finally, we'll talk about the migration process. We have had quite a few customers move from Quest to Cayosoft, so there's a lot of experience here that we are going to share. So let's get started. So without further ado, here are the Quest products that Cayosoft replaces and how we can replace them. So Cayosoft's platform is actually much more integrated compared to our Quest portfolio. So Cayosoft essentially has two products, Cayosoft Administrator and Cayosoft Guardian. And then Guardian has sort of your base level and Guardian Forced Recovery, which is sort of a superset of the Guardian functionality that includes everything in the base plus the Forced Recovery functionality, but it's a single deployment, one product. And so Administrator is our product for administration, for management, provisioning, delegated administration, self-service, reporting, etc. So you can see that Administrator covers not just active roles, not just Quest active roles, but also password management, self-service there, related reporting and group policy management, IT security search, etc. And then Guardian is not just, it covers all the audits, so the change history, all the auditing functionality, the change auditor, including the cloud components and the recovery piece. So right as you will see from the demo, right from the audit, you can do recovery. You don't need a separate product for that. And it's a much more streamlined process. And then obviously the forced recovery part. So let's go talk about these products in a little bit more detail. But first, let's talk about why, from our experience, why Quest customers come to us. So I guess the biggest themes that we are hearing here is that they are either looking to consolidate and streamline the administration. Again, as you could see from the table before, about 10 Quest products or so get replaced with just two products from, and that includes not just on-premises part, but the cloud part. Again, with Quest, you often have to do separate products, separate deployments for your on-premise infrastructure, for the cloud infrastructure. Cayosoft products were built later for the hybrid world, for the hybrid and cloud world. And so they include within the same products both the cloud components, the cloud platforms management, and the on-premises. And then finally, frankly, it's the cost escalation. A lot of Quest customers are upset these days because they don't get a lot of innovation from Quest. Quest is not investing much in R&D, but Quest keeps coming back to customers demanding more and more money. And so it's cost is a big factor. Right? Okay, let's go to the next slide. So speaking of Cayosoft portfolio, again, I talked about that briefly a couple slides ago. Essentially, we have our administrator product that does management. So it's your removing standing high privileged accounts and going to that least privileged administrative model, delegate administration, task automation, provisioning, deprovisioning, reducing your attack surface, improving efficiency. And then besides management, we do monitoring and recovery. So monitoring again, seeing all your change history, enforcing your security, finding all the threats and attacks, and then the recovery, right? Being able to recover granular changes, individual changes, or doing full force recovery. Let's talk in a bit more detail about each of those products. Again, on the management side, as I mentioned, it's both improving your efficiency and improving your security. So we do hybrid administration, as I mentioned, from the single console, as Craig will demonstrate shortly. You can manage your hybrid environment from just a single console instead of 20 different native tools or multiple tools from Quest, etc. You automate your processes, your provisioning, deprovisioning, change process. We ship with about 250 different building blocks from which it is fairly easy to construct your workflows. We reduce errors with administration. We automate group management. We have self-service with obviously rules and guardrails around that. And we do license management and license optimization, which obviously in the Microsoft's world and in the world of online licensing can save a lot of money. And then on the security side of management, obviously your granular role-based access controls, your RBAC, and your policies and procedure rules for your governance, automated group management with automated access attestation, and automated provisioning, deprovisioning. All of that helps you reduce your attack surface and make sure that your users only have the permissions to the scopes that they need to manage and within the functionality that within the features that they need to be able to invoke and within the rules that guide that. On the monitoring side, again, the idea is that you accelerate any response to whatever happens in your environment. You get instant alerts in your email or Teams or any systems with which you integrate. You can automate you can automate responses. You can block changes and roll back changes automatically. You can ensure your compliance, etc., and keep all the change history. And then you minimize impact of any changes. You identify threats, you identify vulnerabilities, you prioritize your risks, you go ahead and you fix them so you can find any threats, any attacks quickly and mitigate them, again, promptly mitigate them or even automatically mitigate them. And you get that complete view again across your on-premises Active Directory, your Entra ID, your Intune, your Microsoft 365. And then finally, on the recovery side, again, as I mentioned, you can roll back any individual changes with a single click of a button. As Craig will demonstrate, again, the tool is very easy to use. It's very easy to find your changes and to pinpoint the exact things that you want to roll back and roll them back with a single click of a button. The tool is smart enough to understand the hybrid world and understand how changes can be interconnected and how a single rollback actually needs to roll back multiple things in multiple places without the need to mount your backups or compare your backups against your live environment, etc. And then finally, with the full force recovery, again, our solution has been granted a patent because that's the only solution in the industry that gives you instant force recovery, because we have what we call standby force, which is effectively an active passive cluster for your Active Directory, giving you the ability to instantly switch back to that standby should your production forest go down. That being said, let me pass the microphone to Craig, our principal security engineer, who can show you the products and go through the details of our solution.
Thank you, Dmitry. Let's go ahead and look a little bit further into how Cayosoft is modernizing this space. The first thing we're going to look at is Cayosoft Guardian. As Dmitry mentioned earlier, it's all about change monitoring, object recovery, as well as it allows you to do threat detection. So if we look at it from a change monitoring alerting perspective, it allows you to do continuous change monitoring across the entire ecosystem, not just on-prem Active Directory. We can look at Entra ID, Microsoft 365, things like Exchange Online, Teams, as well as Microsoft Intune. This allows organizations to easily isolate changes, and I'll get into how you can actually see these changes in real time, as well as you can block unwanted changes, and I'll demonstrate that later on as part of the demonstration. So again, it gives you complete coverage for your entire ecosystem. And if we compare that to similar Quest solutions out there, you're looking at multiple solutions to do just the things that Cayosoft Guardian will handle in a single platform. If we look at immediate object attribute and recovery, one of the things I'll mention is there's no backup files to mount, right? So we can go in and look at the changes in real time, and with one click, we can roll back these settings if they're unwanted or if someone made a mistake in our environment. So there's no need to compare, well, basically a snapshot from the live, so there's no missing data, and it really simplifies the recovery process for your teams. So again, I mentioned one of the things about it is continuous unified change history. So we're able to go across the entire ecosystem. We're not relying on traditional AD event logs. We do use those to help us correlate some information, but we're connecting to Active Directory through the replication API, able to see those changes near real time, as well as because we are pulling down this information from Active Directory and these environments from a native perspective, and then pulling them in and doing some correlation, we can write these out to our the event log, and then that can easily be picked up by any SIM, whether that be Microsoft Sentinel or any other SIM solution that you're working with. One of the things that is really unique about Guardian is our threat detection capability. So we can go out and ingest your current state of the state, and I'll get into that a little bit more. Looking at where you might have AD, Entra ID misconfigurations to help you harden and clean up your hybrid environments. And then beyond that, we also have real-time threat detection that alert you of new misconfigurations that could happen through what we'll call administrative drift or even a threat actor. And we'll get into some of those as well. That threat detection, it's not a point-in-time snapshot like some of these other solutions out there. It's continuous. It has the ability to alert you via both email, also integrates into Microsoft Teams, as well as I mentioned, it also integrates into your SIM through event log integration. It comes with detailed threat summary reporting as well. So again, Guardian, it's really looking at it from across the whole entire ecosystem from a monitoring perspective, eliminating solutions like Change Auditor, AD and on-demand, recovery manager solutions, as well as Security Guardian. If we get into Guardian and look at the other side of Guardian, that is our forest recovery. Guardian is the only solution, so Guardian Forest Recovery is the only patented solution that has this forest recovery capability. When I say forest recovery capability, I'm talking about standby. And the reason why that's important is that all other solutions on the market, they require you to recover after an incident occurred in your environment. When you have standby forest recovery in your environment, you've already recovered. So we can guarantee recovery. And that allows it to be the fastest forest recovery on the market. We can recover directory objects as well, recover DCs, domains, but really the bread and butter here is the standby forest, because Active Directory is mission critical to the business. We all know that. And in a ransomware attack or a complete outage, you don't want to be trying to recover a post-ransomware or some kind of outage in your environment. Maybe it's not even ransomware. Maybe it's something else that's requiring you to do a forest recovery scenario. You want to make sure that that solution has already been recovered prior to that. And then the other thing is you want to be able to guarantee that that backup is clean. So we don't rely on any kind of operating system. So we're not backing up like the operating system. We're recovering to clean images, whether that be AWS or Azure. So there's no worry about reinfection of trying to use like a traditional backup solution. We do not have to worry about any kind of incomplete snapshots, as well as because this is an isolated environment, it can be used for virtual labs. But one of the other things that we'll talk about is it's scheduled, it's automatic, and it's fully tested every night. So basically, if there was a reason why it was failing, you would immediately get an alert, so you can immediately address it before it becomes a problem to your organization. So again, fastest force recovery out there on the market, guaranteed recovery, no need to go and mount backup tapes, no need to compare live from old. It's just there, right? So it's there when you need it. So if we look at it from a comparison for monitor and recovery, really that's going to be the Cayosoft Guardian Force Recovery Solution. And what I say by that is because Guardian, as Dimitri mentioned earlier, has all these features around threat detection, change monitoring, change history as well. But when we get into looking at Guardian with Force Recovery, we're now really changing the landscape for monitoring and recovery of Active Directory. We're looking at the ability to replace multiple solutions from Quest, whether that be Security Guardian, Change Auditor, their recovery solutions, or their audit solutions. So if we look at it from that aspect, one of the key benefits is we're going to reduce complexity and administrative overhead. And the reason why that's important is if we have complexity and administrative overhead, that actually can make our environments less secure. So if we have one console to go to and manage or go in and review all these changes, look at threat detection, go in and be able to recover from, whether it be an attribute change or a forest recovery, again, light architecture, basically one solution to kind of rule them all is what I'll say. So that's one of the key differences with our Guardian Forest Recovery solution. It takes into account of everything you get with Guardian, and then it extends that further into giving you the standby forest recovery. And we'll get into that later on into the demonstration, but I want to kind of highlight that. If we look at Cayosoft and really the Guardian and Forest Recovery, it has real-time monitoring for both AD, Entra ID, and beyond, right? So M365, as I mentioned, conditional access policies, Intune, Teams, Exchange online permissions, Entra ID, tenant settings. We can integrate, whether that be just regular email alerting, or we can integrate into more modern forms of communication like Microsoft Teams. And to take it one step further, because we're generating and writing this back to the event logs, we can integrate seamlessly with any SIM that can ingest event logs. And I don't know of any SIM solution out there on the market that can't consume event logs from a Windows environment. We have built-in threat detection. So again, I mentioned it goes out and ingests the current state, tells you exactly where you might be misconfigured or permission. These are the attack pathways that the bad guys are going to use to get into your environment. We provide one-click automated rollback. No need to mount those tapes. Full force recovery with standby. That's the game changer. We can do both granular object recovery as well as we have full-on cloud support for these solutions. So ironically, if you look at just from Cayosoft Guardian and Forest Recovery, we're expanding your coverage, right? So that is with one solution, making it very easy for your organization to really monitor and recover your environment. And if we throw in administrator, which we'll get in there later, now we have a true security solution for managed monitoring and recovery. We'll get into that later on, but I want to kind of highlight that as we think through some of these things. So again, if we look at some of the key features, that real-time monitoring and alerting, as I mentioned, it's built in, right? There's no need to worry about that. It's already there for you. It goes across the entire ecosystem. Built-in threat detection, again, gives you your current threat landscape, teaches you, and I'll show you basically step-by-step how to go in and remediate, and harden your platform, and then really keeps your environment clean moving forward. Automated one-click rollback. That is right. If you think about it, we see a change in our environment, and it's something that we didn't intend. I don't want to have to go search and mount a backup, compare live. I want to be able to go in and quickly one-click roll that back, get my business back up and running. And I'll show you why that's important later on. And then that full force recovery. And really, when I say full force recovery, I'm really focused on the standby force recovery. Yes, we can do the other traditional force recovery, but the standby force recovery that's patented is the only solution out there that has this, and it guarantees that force recovery. I don't want to guess as an AD admin. So let's get into Guardian and how we look at hybrid change monitoring and recovery. So let me go ahead, and I'm going to go off camera here for a minute because I'm going to go between screens and it might be a little distracting. But I'm going to pull up the platform here in a second. One second. So here we're going to start out, and we're in Cayosoft Guardian. The first thing I want to let you know is, again, this is an all-in-one solution. So we're going to talk about threat detection, change monitoring, as well as our recovery capabilities with this platform. So the first thing I want to be able to look at is, how is my platform doing overall, right? We can see that, hey, some changes, active threats, all from a single, easy to see dashboard within this one platform. But if I drill into different modules within the platform, and we'll focus on threat detection here, we have a dedicated dashboard just for threat detection as well. We can come in and see that it's constantly going out and detecting new threats based on our threat definition roles, and we'll get into that a little bit. But the other thing is, to update the threat detection rules, all I need to do is go in and check for updates, or we can actually have this to go out and schedule your upgrade for you as well. And the reason why I say check for updates is because we are constantly adding new threat definitions to our solution, right? Whether that be new AD attack pathways or potentially misconfigurations, or Entra ID, or more recently, we're adding more around into threat detection, which you'll see coming out later in December. So stay tuned on some of those more advanced threats out there. But if we can kind of drill into here, we can see that we have some threats. And here's a common threat or misconfiguration that I see in most environments. So a little bit about myself. I've been doing Active Directory for a very long time, and have worked for numerous companies, and have gone in and done some threat assessment type activity. And one of the most common misconfigurations that you'll find in organizations is you'll see accounts that have desencryption enabled. So we can see that here, this account does, right? We have an AD user account with desencryption enabled, and we can go in and it'll see exactly what we need to do to remediate that. So that's the first thing in. So let's say I went in and remediated that account, and now I remediated this threat completely from my environment, so it would no longer appear. But yet, that's one part of the equation. I want to be able to prevent that from occurring ever again in my environment. So let's just say I'm going to go in and set that particular attribute on this account. So let's go in and say we're going to say use only Kerberos desencryption. And because we have real-time change monitoring, and that's the key, real-time change monitoring, if we go into the change monitoring piece and under change history, not only do we see that, hey, this attack, right, or this was updated, which I never want in my environment again. So basically I'm starting to drift. But one of the key things about the change monitoring piece of Guardian is the instant rollback. So we can see the before, right? We can see that this was not set and I set it. But what we'll see next is instant rollback. So think about that. I prevented an attack pathway into the environment. I stopped administrative drift. I would never want this setting. And if I did want this setting, I can actually update the role to grant certain users to allow that. So again, we're taking the overhead out of the equation from it. We just prevented right? We basically block an exploit from an attacker's perspective. They cannot use this in your environment against you anymore. So just think about the power of that. So change history, again, it's looking at not just on-prem Active Directory. You look at permissions. We can see here previously someone made a change in my environment that I didn't want in my environment. So they basically added this user to a role, right? So I could go in and roll those changes back as well. Here's the actual change for that. This user, Kale, was added to the into administrator role. I don't want him to have that. I can go in and force that and roll it back automatically. One click, never have to worry about it. I can also set up a dedicated alert for that moving forward. And we have the ability to go in and look at these saved queries to help you filter down to specific environments as well. So very easy to see that the change history, again, is looking at more than just on-prem Active Directory, even Entra ID. We're looking at things like enterprise application. We can see here that this bad guy changed some permissions on the bad actor app for Microsoft Graph, right? So we can see that they were given some additional permissions inside of here, and they were allowed to basically get administrative unit read write all. I don't want the bad actor to have that, so we can roll it back. Again, no need to mount anything, automatically taken care of for you. So let's look at one more thing around change history, just kind of show you the power of being able to use this in an incident. So I have this user, The Rock, and he's a member of this M3, right? So let's go in and let's pretend here for a minute that we had someone go in, or admin, go in and remove all these users for a group. But what this group is used for is provisioning some licensing in Microsoft 365 for me. And this group, and I, as a business, rely on this for frontline support. So without these services, I'm dead in the water. Well, my help desk gets a call from The Rock, and the help desk, they're talking to The Rock, and they said, okay, let me go see what changed on The Rock's account. Why did he lose this access? And we can quickly see that The Rock was removed from this group inside of our Active Directory environment. But we're starting to get a lot of calls about a lot of folks coming in, not just The Rock's calling about this. So now I want to dig a little deeper. And now we see that this group was involved. I want to go in and see who else may have been impacted. And I can see, oh, well, this is everybody in my organization. Again, no need to panic. We're back up and running within seconds. We can push that change as well automatically from here through AD Connect. So now, or Entra ID Connect, and now we're back up and running. So if we go back in, we can see that these users are going to be back up and running. Oh, let me filter, let's take The Rock off, and now we'll back. We can see all these users will be put back up, right? Incident completely averted. We're good to go. We're now push those changes to M365. Those users will now be able to access those resources that they need, because that's required for them to be in the front line. So again, that's the change monitoring piece. Let's go in a little bit into forced recovery. And really what I want to focus on is standby forced recovery. So we can do traditional backup and recovery, but we really want to get into forced recovery. Again, this is a standby force environment that is going to go out and automatically deploy your recovery site either in AWS or Azure. And then it runs through this integrated process step by step. So again, we can see like everything that's gone on. You can see that it's automatically done for you. I want to save some time to get into administrator, so I'm going to drop here. But as you can see, this guaranteeing me that I'm going to be back up and running. I could actually log on to these servers if I needed in that scenario. So now let's go back to the presentation and jump into administrator. So let's jump to the PowerPoint. And so let's talk about administrator at a high level. I'm not going to go too deep because I want to spend some time being able to demonstrate this, but this is really addressing Quest active roles and one identity password management. So things that we'll talk about is enterprise delegation control, right? Both role and role-based access control allows me to do just-in-time permissions. Also management and automation, built for hybrid, cloud user provisioning, policy enforcement, group management. I can do self, dynamic, group families, etc. Automated runbook flows, right? So really simplifying that entire process. So if we look at some of these comparisons here from Cayosoft Administrator, if we just look at the core management, Administrator was built for modern unified console, but it was built for hybrid environments day one. So there was no adding on hybrid after the fact. It was built, and it was built for extensive automation. As Dimitri mentioned, over 200 plus roles that pretty much would do everything that you would need to do from an AD administration perspective, which means that this allows us to be able to do hybrid user provisioning and deprovisioning, so onboarding and suspend activity. One solution, right? And the key there is this reduce our overall costs. And then self-service was built to offload these basic tasks from your IT resources. So self-service was built as part of the product, right? So no additional add-ons. It's fully extensive what we can do from a self-service and really grant what we only want to grant. So let's first talk about what's required to really move from Quest to Cayosoft. We're here to help. I want to make sure you guys understand it. So if we look at just a few things that we look at it from an AD provisioning and deprovisioning process, we really just need to review your existing active roles provisioning and deprovisioning processes and look at what systems you're integrated in, and then replicate that into Cayosoft Administrator. We need to review the existing roles and delegations. We need to take into considerations of your virtual attributes, as well as any attribute policies and dynamic groups. But what I want to tell you is you don't have to do this on your own. Cayosoft and our partner ecosystem, we're here to guide you and help you make sure that you transition seamlessly, not missing a step. You want to be able to get in there, get converted over to administrator, and make sure that your business doesn't miss a step in being able to perform the actions that they need to do. So let's go into administrator and see how we modernize hybrid administration. I'm going to hit on a couple key things as part of that. So let's jump over to our administrator console, and I'm going to talk through a couple things up front. I talked about automation. So automation, we have run books built for you to pretty much do everything that you would ever need to do in your environment. And if there's not a pre-existing run book, you can create your own based on some details. So if we look at provisioning users, we can provision these hybrid users, right? So we can look at what those steps look like. So we can update accounts, basically assign licensing, remote. And if we step through some of those other processes, so again, if we look at the provision, there's all these different processes, but we also have suspend capability as well. So we can go in and remove. So let's go in and look at the default user suspend. And you can see, you can go in and set different settings, right? So we can clear, change attributes, remove from groups, all things that you would want as part of your onboarding, right? Basically your onboarding and offboarding process. So think about it as your user account lifecycle management. It's automatically there. We can spend probably hour just around some of those advanced techniques that we've built into our solution, but obviously we do not have all the time to spend just on administrator. So let's jump to some other things about the Cayosoft Administrator. So let's talk about dynamic group. So here I have a dynamic group called accounting, and I set up a basic role for operations. And one of the things I want to kind of hit on is, let's look at this group before. Just grab the operations group. So if we look at the group right here, you can see that there's no members of this group. But if I want to go in and create a role, and that's what I did, we can go in and say, here, I want to create a dynamic rule, and I want to base it off of department equals operations. So I have some users out there that have this rule or this department equal operations in my Active Directory environment. And if I'm not sure, right, I can go in and preview. And I always suggest preview the rule. We can take that. We can take a look there, and we can see this is everybody that it's going to hit out of in our environment. And we can go in and make sure, right, spot check these users to make sure that they are. And once they are, I can go in and run this rule. So I can go in and run that rule, and it'll automatically put them in to our operations group. So again, dynamic rule in your environment, dynamic groups in your environment can automatically go in, and I can also schedule this to run at any time. And then basically I make those changes in our environment, and now if I go back in refresh, you can see these groups have been added. And one of the other things you'll notice is it's saying it's controlled by Cayosoft dynamic groups. So we update this description there. So if we look at it from that aspect again, right? So now we have lifecycle management, and then we also have group management. Now let's go in and look at delegation, right? So basically being able to do delegations based on roles and rules within our organization. So I'm going to go to a different console. Let me jump over to my workstation here, and I'm going to just show you. Now I'm in the web, and I'm going to log in. I'm going to log out real quick up for this user. And I'm going to log in as this George Bowles. Now, one thing I want to show you real fast, and I could have shown it through the console, but I'm just going to show you really quick in here that George Bowles, if we look at his membership, he's just a regular domain user. So remember, Cayosoft administrator does not need to delegate standing privileges to manage Active Directory or Entra ID, right? Just think of it as like a proxy permission where everything is being done through the Cayosoft service account to do this management. And then that allows us to then not have standing privileges which attackers could utilize in our environment. So let's go back. I just want to kind of highlight that. Let's go back in and see this. George, he has rights to everything. So if we kind of go in and look, we can see that he can go in and manage pretty much anything in our environment. Sorry. We expand this, right? If we look at Active Directory, we can go in, do some searching, etc. in our environment. Let's just grab one user here. And you can see that this guy could go, because he has full control, he can go in and monitor or modify anything he wants. So let's go in and log in as somebody else. We're going to get rid of George here. And we're going to log in as Aaron. So let's log in as Aaron. You're going to see that his experience is a lot different. First of all, he can't see all users. He can only see what I granted him access to. And not only he can not only see, but he has a limited help desk user role. So let's look at his account real fast. So we can see that Aaron is a member of this help desk limited, which is used to grant access within Cayosoft administrator to really scope this down. And if we went in and looked at this, what he can do, it's view, right? This account cannot go in and change anything. Now I can grant more permissions to that role inside of administrator, but you can see he only has the ability to go in and view these. So again, that granular control, not just over on-prem Active Directory, but also your hybrid environments. It's really like it's changing the game, making it very hard from an attacker's perspective because we're eliminating these standing privileges. And to be honest, attackers need privileges for privilege escalation in an environment. So if we can reduce those privileges by eliminating them long term, it really doesn't give the attacker much to go after from that aspect. So if you combine the power of both Cayosoft Administrator and the Guardian Force Recovery solution, you have a true solution for Active Directory or hybrid security, right? Because we're reducing your footprint, we're helping you, we have all the threat detection, etc., built in. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dimitri, and he's going to talk through this particular case study.
Sounds good. All right. So as I mentioned, we quite a few customers recently have been quitting Quest and joining us. I'll talk just about one of them at a high level without disclosing their name, but it's one of the it's a brand that you probably recognize, one of the Fortune 100 multinational pharma companies, one of the bigger, more established ones there. So they joined Cayosoft family recently. Again, one of the reasons why they wanted to join Cayosoft was because they got frankly tired of Quest just coming after them, demanding more and more money without demonstrating any additional value. And just the sheer complexity of managing the whole portfolio of all those different deployments was also a pain, and they were not happy with the force recovery solution that it just was hard for them to use because it required manual testing and a lot of manual provisioning, etc., etc. And so they found us. They looked at other alternatives in the industry, and frankly, they couldn't find any other vendor that could replace all of Quest Microsoft management and not just bits and pieces. So they picked us because we could give them not only that instant force recovery, but we could also replace both management and recovery and monitoring from Quest. Let's go next. I have a couple more slides, and then we'll go to Q&A. So just to summarize again, why we think that we are your best bet is that we are Microsoft expert. We specialize on Microsoft and on Microsoft Directory, both on premises and cloud. We are very innovative. As you could see from Craig's demo, these are modern products that have been built for the hybrid and cloud world, and that have everything you need within that small number of consoles effectively within 2 products. We are very customer focused. We have literally, as of right now, this month and actually last few months, we had 100% customer satisfaction rating from our tech support, and we have incredibly high retention rate. 98% of customers are staying with us, which is very high for that industry. And then let's go quickly through our team. There's actually a lot of Quest expertise at Cayosoft. In fact, our CEO and our CTO, Bob and Andrei, they were running and they created Quest Exfil Server. They were running product management and the developer team for that product, among other Quest Microsoft products. And then I myself, again, spent a lot of time at Quest and a lot of Quest products, including the PowerShell portfolio, the Exfil Server and standalone, the Change Auditor, the on-demand family, all of that got launched out of my team. We have Jared Rourke, who is leading our technical implementation and support team, and he has been doing that for Quest. And then Larry is our head of partnerships, and he was director of channels at Quest. So we have a lot of Quest expertise here in that company, and we've been doing that for many years. We know these products, we know these challenges, and so we've rebuilt those solutions effectively for the modern world, and we would be happy to get you to run this. My last slide to summarize why we think that Cayosoft is the choice for you. Much simpler products, incredibly low total cost of ownership due to that integration much better coverage, right? Much better coverage for threat detection, for the monitoring and recovery, not just Active Directory, not just users and groups in Entra, but pretty much all of Active Directory, all of Entra into Microsoft 365. Very experienced team. And then some functionality like instant forest recovery is absolutely unique and better than with anyone in the industry. That was the last slide that I had. So, Elaine, do we have any questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions that were sent privately. The first one is, one of the issues that we have with Quest Audit Manager are the agents it puts on domain controllers. We want to get rid of these. Does Cayosoft require agents on DCs?
Okay, getting a lot of these questions, especially after the CrowdStrike issue a few months ago. So no, we do not use agents for our change auditing for our Guardian products, and that was an explicit decision that we took. Again, back at Quest, realized the issue that we had with that architecture back then. At that time, 20 years ago, that was probably the only way to do some of that functionality because some of the APIs were missing, etc. Now, with the enhanced Microsoft APIs, we can do all of that without agents. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, another question. How does Cayosoft address the issue of seeing all changes from a single console?
Okay, so a couple of aspects of that. So A is that, as you could see from Craig's demo, we ourselves are using a unified approach, unified change history that joins the changes from on-premise Active Directory, from different cloud systems, from Microsoft into one single change history within what we do. And also we are smart enough to understand that, say, Elaine on premises in Active Directory and Elaine's account in the cloud is the same Elaine, and so we can show that in a unified way, in a consistent way. And then secondly, if you want to talk about, again, from the question it was not clear, if you talked about our functionality or the changes in your company in general, Craig mentioned that we do integrate with SIEM solutions. And so if you are using something else to get that 360 view of everything in your company, you can do that as well. You can integrate our change history into your SIEM solution of choice.
Okay, another question. How does Cayosoft integrate with security and information event management solutions?
Oh, it's fairly straightforward. As I mentioned, we do integrate with them. It's simply through event log export import. So that's the sort of industry standard approach in the Microsoft space. All of the SIEM solutions obviously support event logs. That's what they do. And so you simply set up your Cayosoft product to export to an event log, and then your SIEM solution to import from that. So very straightforward.
One more. Let's see. You talked about the active roles transition process. Can you also explain the one for change auditor and recovery manager?
Okay, yes, we missed that. So we missed that because actually, frankly, it's much more straightforward. Because in the change auditor and Quest recovery products, there's not as much of customization that customers would typically have. And so I guess you could have, say, your alerts that you would need to recreate, your blocking rules that you would need to recreate into rollback rules in Cayosoft. But basically, again, I think it should be very straightforward. You can run them side by side if you need to, because again, as I mentioned, we don't require any agents, so there are no compatibility issues per se. So you can install your Cayosoft Guardian side by side with Quest products, give them a try, and then start using, say, right away, start using Cayosoft for recovery, then recreate your alerts, recreate your rollback rules, and then completely stop using the corresponding Quest products. I don't know, Craig, let me know if I missed any of the scenarios there.
No, I think like you said, because there's not a ton of customization, and because we're not requiring any agents, we can run side by side and it's pretty much really easy to configure Cayosoft Guardian, right? You can be up and running within just a few hours.
Okay, I don't have any other questions that have come in. Do you guys want to wrap it up?
Absolutely. So thank you for joining the webinar. And I think, Elaine, did you want to talk about?
Yes. So we're excited to let everyone know that next week, Cayosoft will be at Microsoft Ignite. We will be in the MISA at Microsoft Expert Meetup Hub, and we will be doing demos. So if you're attending Ignite next week and you'd like to meet Craig in person, which I'm sure you all do, he will be there giving demos from 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 at Wednesday, November 20th, but we can also schedule other times while you're at the show. So there's a link there. I know you wouldn't link on this right now, but just go to our events page on Cayosoft and you can sign up for a demo and we'll get that going for you. And then the next slide, another webinar we have coming up on December 4th. And this is specifically around Intune, and we are excited that we'll have Kevin Sullivan, who's the Principal Product Manager for Intune at Microsoft, joining us. And this is around essential strategies for auditing, alerting, and recovering your Intune environment. So that, again, if you go to our events page, you can sign up for that today. Next slide. And just our final thank you for joining us. Again, if you want a demo, we're happy to take your email in the chat or in the questions, and we can get that scheduled. We also offer trials. We can get you quotes and answer any additional questions. So thank you, Dimitri. Thank you, Craig. And thank you, everyone, for attending today.